Imagine a woman has options. She could choose someone more successful, more attractive, richer, louder, or more popular than you. So what makes her look at you and say, "I choose him"? The answer isn't manipulation, chasing, or trying to become the perfect man. People don't commit because you convince them harder. They commit when they feel something rare in your presence. Trust, clarity, respect, and emotional safety. If you want to be chosen, stop competing for attention and start becoming the kind of man whose character makes the choice feel obvious. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop asking, "How can I make her choose me?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" Because the moment your entire life becomes an attempt to win someone's approval, you give away something far more valuable than attention. You give away your sense of identity. You begin measuring your worth through her reactions, her messages, her interest, her approval, and eventually her decision. But your worth was never supposed to be determined by whether one person chooses you. If a woman has many options, you do not need to defeat every other man. You do not need to become richer than them, louder than them, more attractive than them, or constantly compete for her attention. Competition is exhausting because there will always be someone who has something you don't. Someone may have more money. Someone may be more physically attractive. Someone may have more followers, a better career, or greater social status. If your confidence depends on being better than everyone else, you will always feel threatened by someone else's strengths. Real confidence comes from knowing what you bring to the table without needing to announce it. A man worth choosing understands that character is more important than performance. He doesn't walk into a relationship asking, "What do I need to do so she won't leave?" He asks, "What kind of person do I want to become?" Regardless of who stays, that question changes everything. It moves you from insecurity to responsibility. It moves you from chasing validation to building character. Think about the difference between a man who desperately wants to impress someone and a man who is genuinely proud of the life he is building. The first man is constantly performing. He changes his opinions depending on who is watching. He exaggerates his accomplishments. He tries to appear unavailable because he thinks mystery creates attraction. He may pretend not to care when he actually cares deeply. Everything becomes a strategy. The second man doesn't need a strategy for every interaction. He has principles. He knows what he believes. He knows what he will accept and what he will not accept. He works toward goals that matter to him. He takes responsibility for his mistakes. He treats people with respect even when there is nothing to gain from doing so. And because his identity isn't dependent on being admired, his confidence feels different. That is the kind of value you cannot fake for very long. Becoming someone worth choosing doesn't mean becoming perfect. In fact, perfection can become another form of insecurity. It means becoming dependable. It means learning how to communicate instead of disappearing when things become uncomfortable. It means controlling your emotions without suppressing them. It means being ambitious without becoming arrogant. It means being kind without becoming a people pleaser. It means having standards without treating other people as inferior. And most importantly, it means building a life that you respect. Ask yourself, if nobody were watching, what would you still work on? What promises would you keep? What habits would you build? What weaknesses would you confront? What kind of man would you become if you knew that no applause was coming? Those questions reveal character. Because attraction can get someone's attention, but character determines whether trust can survive. Charm can create a first impression, but consistency creates belief. Confidence can open a door, but integrity determines what happens after you walk through it. So don't make your mission to convince a woman that you're better than every other option. Make your mission to become deeply grounded in who you are. Build your health. Build your mind. Build your skills. Build your relationships. Build your purpose. Learn to stand alone without becoming emotionally closed. Learn to love without losing yourself. Then something remarkable happens. You stop walking into relationships asking, "Will she choose me?" You begin walking in with a different mindset. I know who I am. I know what I value. I know what I am building. And if we choose each other, we will build something meaningful together. That is not arrogance. That is self-respect. And when your life is built on purpose rather than approval, you become attractive in a way that cannot be manufactured. You no longer need to chase someone into choosing you. You simply become the kind of person whose presence, principles, and consistency give another person a genuine reason to want to stay. If you want someone to genuinely choose you, understand something that many people overlook. Attention is not the same thing as connection. You can make someone laugh, impress them, text them all day, and give them endless compliments, but none of that guarantees that they will feel safe enough to build something meaningful with you. What creates lasting connection is the feeling that a person can be themselves around you without constantly worrying about being judged, controlled, manipulated, or punished for expressing what they really think. Emotional safety doesn't mean agreeing with everything she says. It doesn't mean becoming passive or allowing someone to disrespect you. It means creating an environment where honesty doesn't automatically become a threat. If she tells you something difficult, you don't immediately become defensive. If she disagrees with you, you don't treat disagreement as betrayal. If she needs space, you don't automatically assume she is abandoning you. You learn to communicate before you react. Think about how rare that is. Many people don't listen to understand. They listen to prepare their defense. The moment someone says something uncomfortable, their mind starts constructing an argument. That's not what I meant. You're overreacting. You always do this. I was only trying to help. And suddenly, a simple conversation becomes a competition over who is right. A mature relationship doesn't need two people trying to win every conversation. It needs two people trying to understand each other. When she speaks, listen to what she is actually saying. Don't immediately search for a solution. Don't assume you already know what she feels. Sometimes people don't need you to fix everything. Sometimes they simply need to know that their feelings can exist in your presence without being dismissed. There is strength in being able to say, I understand why you felt that way, even if you see the situation differently. That sentence doesn't mean you agree. It means you care enough to understand. And emotional safety works both ways. You should also be able to express your feelings without pretending that nothing affects you. Being emotionally strong doesn't mean becoming emotionally unavailable. It means you can experience disappointment, jealousy, fear, or frustration without allowing those emotions to control your behavior. You don't punish someone with silence because you're angry. You don't create jealousy to test whether she cares. You don't threaten to leave simply because you want reassurance. You don't manipulate someone's emotions to gain power over them. Those behaviors may create temporary reactions, but they destroy trust. If you want to be someone a woman chooses willingly, let your presence communicate one simple message. You can be honest with me. That message is powerful because trust grows when people repeatedly discover that honesty is safe. If she tells you that something hurt her, don't automatically make the conversation about your intentions. Your intention matters, but so does the impact of your behavior. Ask questions. Understand. Take responsibility when responsibility is yours. And when you make a mistake, apologize without turning the apology into another excuse. At the same time, don't confuse emotional safety with having no boundaries. A strong man can say, I care about you, but I won't accept being spoken to disrespectfully. He can love someone and still maintain standards. He can be compassionate without becoming a doormat. He can listen without surrendering his identity. That's the balance. The goal isn't to create a relationship where nobody ever feels uncomfortable. Growth will sometimes be uncomfortable. Honest conversations can be uncomfortable. Boundaries can be uncomfortable. But there is a difference between healthy discomfort and emotional chaos. Healthy discomfort leads to understanding. Emotional chaos leads to fear. And people naturally move toward relationships where they feel respected, understood, and free to be authentic. So if you want to become more attractive, don't focus only on what you say when everything is going well. Pay attention to who you become when you're disappointed. Pay attention to how you behave when you don't get what you want. Pay attention to how you respond when someone disagrees with you, because that's where your character becomes visible. Anyone can be charming when they're trying to impress someone, but emotional maturity appears when there is nothing to gain from pretending. Become the person who can listen without attacking, communicate without manipulating, love without controlling, and set boundaries without cruelty. When someone feels emotionally safe around you, they don't feel trapped into choosing you. They feel free to choose you. And there is a profound difference between those two things. One is pressure. The other is trust. One of the most attractive qualities a person can develop is having a life that does not revolve around getting someone's attention. There is a difference between wanting a relationship and needing a relationship to give your life meaning. When you make another person the center of your identity, you place an enormous burden on the relationship. Suddenly, every message matters. Every delay feels personal. Every disagreement feels like a threat. And your happiness becomes dependent on whether another person is giving you the response you want. But when you have a purpose bigger than getting her, something changes inside you. You stop chasing validation and start building a life. Purpose doesn't have to mean becoming famous, incredibly wealthy, or changing the world overnight. Purpose can begin with something much simpler. Deciding what kind of person you want to become and what contribution you want to make with your life. Maybe you want to build a business. Maybe you want to master a skill. Maybe you want to become a better leader, support your family, create something meaningful, or simply become stronger and wiser than you were yesterday. The specific goal matters less than the direction. A person without direction can become obsessed with distraction. When there is nothing meaningful to pursue, attention naturally moves toward whatever provides immediate stimulation. Social media, entertainment, approval, romance, constant messaging, endless comparison. But when you have something meaningful to build, your energy has somewhere to go. This doesn't mean you should ignore a woman or pretend that relationships don't matter. Relationships matter enormously. But a healthy relationship should become part of your life, not the entire definition of your life. Imagine two people entering a relationship. One has no goals outside the relationship. The other has ambitions, friendships, responsibilities, interests, and a mission. When challenges appear, the first person may feel as though their entire world is collapsing. The second person can still experience pain, but they have other pillars holding them up. That independence creates stability, and stability is powerful. Your purpose also gives you something deeper than confidence. It gives you identity. When you know what you're working toward, you don't have to constantly ask, "Am I good enough?" Because your attention is directed toward growth rather than comparison. You begin measuring yourself against your own potential. Maybe you weren't disciplined last year. Become more disciplined this year. Maybe you were afraid to speak up. Learn to communicate. Maybe you wasted years avoiding responsibility. Start taking responsibility today. Progress gives you evidence that you can trust yourself. And self-trust is one of the foundations of genuine confidence. There will always be moments when someone doesn't choose you. Someone may reject you. Someone may lose interest. Someone may choose a different path. If your entire identity depends on being chosen, rejection can feel like proof that you are worthless. But if your identity is connected to your purpose, rejection becomes information rather than a verdict. You can say, "This hurts, but it doesn't define me." Then you continue. You continue building, you continue learning, you continue becoming. That is what purpose does. It gives you somewhere to stand when circumstances change. And there's another important lesson here. Don't build your purpose simply to become more attractive to women. That still puts someone else at the center of your life. Build your purpose because your life deserves to be meaningful whether you're in a relationship or not. Become healthier because you respect your body. Learn because you respect your mind. Work hard because you want to create something valuable. Develop discipline because you want to be able to rely on yourself. Fun of others because you want your existence to contribute something beyond your own comfort. Then, if someone joins your journey, she isn't becoming the reason you move forward. She's becoming someone you can walk beside while you continue moving forward. That's a completely different relationship dynamic. You don't need to constantly prove your worth because your daily life already reflects your values. You don't need to chase every opportunity for attention because you're focused on opportunities for growth. And ironically, that is often when people become more compelling. Not because they're pretending to be unavailable, but because they're genuinely engaged with life. There is something deeply attractive about a person who wakes up with a reason to get out of bed. Someone who has responsibilities, dreams, standards, and a direction. Someone who can love deeply without abandoning everything else that makes them who they are. So don't ask, "How can I make her choose me?" Ask something more powerful. What am I building that is worth choosing to be part of? Because when you build a meaningful life, you no longer approach love from emptiness. You approach it from abundance. You don't need someone to complete you. You become someone who is already whole. And you invite the right person to build something extraordinary alongside you. Anyone can be impressive for a few days. Anyone can say the right words when they are trying to win someone's attention. Anyone can promise the world during the exciting beginning of a relationship. But the real test of character doesn't happen when everything feels new. It happens when the excitement fades, when life becomes stressful, when expectations change, and when there is no longer anything to prove. That is where consistency becomes powerful. If you want someone to genuinely choose you, don't focus only on creating impressive moments. Focus on becoming a person whose actions can be trusted over time. Because trust isn't created by one grand gesture. Trust is created through hundreds of small experiences that communicate the same message. You can rely on me. Consistency means your words and actions don't constantly contradict each other. If you say you'll call, you call. If you make a commitment, you take it seriously. If something changes, you communicate instead of disappearing. If you make a mistake, you acknowledge it rather than creating an excuse. These things may sound ordinary, but ordinary behaviors repeated consistently create extraordinary levels of trust. Think about the people you trust most in your own life. Chances are they aren't necessarily the most charismatic people you've ever met. They're the people whose behavior you can predict in a healthy way. You know they'll show up when they say they will. You know they'll tell you the truth. You know they won't suddenly become a completely different person because they're angry. That reliability creates emotional stability. And emotional stability is especially important in relationships because nobody wants to spend their life guessing which version of someone they're going to encounter today. One day you're extremely affectionate. The next day you disappear. One day you say she's important to you. The next day you intentionally ignore her because you want her to chase you. One day you promise commitment. The next day you create uncertainty just to see how much she cares. That isn't mystery, that's inconsistencies. And inconsistency eventually creates anxiety. If you want to stand out, don't play games with someone's emotions. Be clear. If you're interested, communicate it. If you're not interested, be honest. If you need space, explain it respectfully. If you're upset, talk about it instead of creating punishment through silence. Maturity isn't about never having difficult emotions. It's about handling those emotions responsibly. You will have bad days. You will become frustrated. You will misunderstand each other. You will disagree. That's normal. The question isn't whether conflict will happen. The question is who you become when it happens. Consistency means your values remain present, even when your emotions change. If you believe in respect, you practice respect during an argument. If you believe in honesty, you remain honest when the truth is uncomfortable. If you believe in commitment, you don't abandon your principles simply because you're temporarily angry. This doesn't mean staying in a relationship that is unhealthy or tolerating disrespect. Consistency also means being consistent with your own standards. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is walk away from a situation that repeatedly violates your values. And remember, consistency is not perfection. You will make mistakes. The goal is not to become someone who never fails. The goal is to become someone who responds to failure with accountability. When you hurt someone, don't spend all your energy explaining why you didn't mean to. Listen, understand. Apologize. Change the behavior. An apology without change is just another promise. But an apology followed by consistent action can rebuild trust. This is why you should stop trying to impress people with occasional performances and start building credibility through repeated behavior. Anyone can send flowers once. Character is remembering what matters to someone months later. Anyone can say, "I'm here for you." Character is actually being there when being there is inconvenient. Anyone can promise loyalty when everything is easy. Character is maintaining integrity when temptation appears. That is how trust grows. And there is something else worth remembering. Consistency also creates attraction because it eliminates unnecessary confusion. When someone doesn't have to constantly analyze your behavior, they can relax. They can experience the relationship instead of constantly trying to decode it. You don't need to keep someone interested by making them uncertain. Give them a reason to trust you. Let your behavior speak so consistently that your words don't have to carry the entire weight of your relationship, because eventually people stop listening to what you say and start studying what you repeatedly do. So if you want to become someone worth choosing, don't ask yourself, How can I impress her today? Ask, can she trust the person I will still be 6 months from now? Build that person. Be dependable when nobody is applauding. Be respectful when you're frustrated. Be honest when lying would be easier. Be present when life becomes difficult. Because attraction may begin with a moment, but trust is built through consistency. And when someone sees that your character doesn't disappear when the excitement does, they don't just see someone interesting, they see someone they can build a life with. There is a major difference between making someone feel admired and making someone feel seen. Admiration focuses on what a person looks like, what they can give you, or how they make you feel. Being seen goes deeper. It means recognizing that there is a complete human being in front of you, with dreams, fears, opinions, experiences, strengths, weaknesses, and a life that existed before you entered it. If you want a woman to genuinely choose you, don't treat her like a prize you have to win. Treat her like a person you have the privilege of getting to know. That shift changes the entire relationship. When someone feels like a prize, they can begin to feel like an object in a competition. You may become focused on proving that you're good enough to get her. You start thinking about what you need to say, what you need to buy, how you need to dress, or how you need to behave to secure her attention. But genuine connection isn't built through a performance. It's built through curiosity, respect, and understanding. Ask yourself, do you actually know what matters to her? Not just her favorite food or the music she listens to, but what makes her feel fulfilled? What experiences shaped her? What does she want her life to become? What does she value? What are the things she refuses to compromise on? What makes her feel proud? What makes her afraid? What kind of future does she imagine for herself? When you become genuinely interested in those questions, your conversations change. You're no longer waiting for your turn to speak. You're listening. And listening is one of the most underrated forms of respect. Many people listen only to respond. They hear a few words and immediately start preparing advice, solutions, jokes, or stories about themselves. But sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do is simply stay present. If she tells you about a difficult day, don't immediately turn it into a lecture. If she shares a dream, don't immediately explain why it might fail. If she expresses an emotion, don't automatically tell her whether she should feel that way. First, understand, you can disagree with someone and still respect their experience. You can have different opinions without turning the relationship into a battlefield. But there is another side to being seen. You must also allow her to see the real you. Some people become so focused on impressing someone that they hide everything imperfect about themselves. They pretend to have confidence when they're insecure. They pretend nothing bothers them when something clearly does. They pretend to agree with everything because they are afraid disagreement will destroy attraction. But a relationship built entirely on performance eventually becomes exhausting. You don't need to reveal everything immediately, but you should be authentic. Have your own opinions. Admit when you don't know something. Talk about what matters to you. Let her understand your values and boundaries. Real intimacy requires two real people. And remember, seeing someone does not mean controlling them. If you genuinely care about a woman, you don't need to own her time, friendships, decisions, or attention. You don't need to isolate her from other people to feel secure. You don't need to constantly monitor what she is doing. Love without freedom becomes control. Healthy love says, I want you in my life, but I respect that you are your own person. That kind of respect is powerful because choice becomes meaningful only when freedom exists. If someone stays because they are afraid of your reaction, that's not love. If someone stays because they feel obligated, that's not genuine choice. But if someone has freedom and still chooses to be beside you, that choice carries real meaning. So don't try to make yourself impossible to leave through manipulation. Become someone worth staying with through character. Be interested without being invasive. Be caring without becoming controlling. Be supportive without becoming dependent. Be confident without becoming arrogant. And learn to appreciate someone without turning them into the center of your identity. The goal isn't to make her feel that she cannot live without you. The goal is to create a relationship where both people can live independently, but genuinely prefer to build something together. That is a much stronger foundation. When a woman feels seen, she doesn't feel like she's being evaluated for a role in your life. She feels understood as a person. And when she also sees that you respect yourself, maintain your purpose, communicate honestly, and honor her freedom, something deeper becomes possible. Connection, not possession. Trust, not control. Choice, not pressure. Because the most meaningful relationships aren't built when one person finally convinces another person to stay. They're built when two people look at each other honestly and say, in their own way, I see who you are, I respect who you are, and I choose to build with you. That is the kind of choice worth having. There is one final shift that can completely change the way you approach relationships. Stop thinking only about whether she will choose you and start asking whether you would choose her. That may sound like a small difference in language, but it represents a completely different mindset. When you desperately want someone to choose you, you can become willing to ignore your own standards, values, and instincts just to keep their attention. You begin negotiating against yourself. You tolerate things you once promised yourself you would never tolerate. You stay silent when something bothers you. You become afraid to express your needs because you think honesty might push her away. You start thinking, if I just become more agreeable, more available, more understanding, maybe she will finally choose me. But love should never require you to abandon yourself. A healthy relationship isn't one person proving that they're worthy while the other person sits in judgment. It is two people evaluating whether their values, personalities, goals, and character are compatible. Both people have a choice. That means you should be paying attention too. Does she respect your boundaries? Does she communicate honestly? Does she support your growth? Can you disagree without destroying each other? Does she take responsibility when she makes mistakes? Does she treat other people with basic kindness when there is nothing to gain? Does being around her bring out a better version of you, or does it constantly pull you away from who you want to become? These questions matter because sometimes the desire to be chosen can become so strong that you stop asking whether the relationship is actually good for you. You become more focused on winning the person than understanding the partnership. But the goal isn't to win someone. The goal is to build something healthy with someone who is also willing to build. This doesn't mean becoming judgmental or creating an unrealistic checklist. Nobody is perfect. You aren't perfect either. Compatibility isn't about finding a person without flaws. It's about finding someone whose values can coexist with yours and whose imperfections don't consistently violate your fundamental needs or boundaries. You can love someone and still recognize that you're not right for each other. That's not failure, that's maturity. Real confidence means you can handle the possibility that someone may not choose you. You can appreciate someone without trying to control their decision. You can express your interest without begging for validation. You can make an effort without losing your dignity. And if the answer is no, you can walk away with your character intact. That is one of the strongest positions you can reach emotionally. Because when you know that you can survive rejection, you stop behaving desperately. You stop pretending to be someone you're not. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop chasing people who repeatedly demonstrate that they aren't interested. You begin choosing relationships instead of simply trying to obtain them. And that changes how you carry yourself. You don't need to convince someone of your value. You know what you bring. You also know what you need. You can communicate both clearly. This is not about becoming cold or emotionally detached. In fact, it allows you to love more deeply because you're no longer loving from fear. Fear says, what if she leaves? Confidence says, I hope we stay together, but I will remain myself either way. Fear says, what can I do to make her choose me? Confidence says, let's discover whether we genuinely choose each other. Fear tries to control the outcome. Confidence respects the choice. And this is where relationships become much more meaningful. Imagine two people who don't need to possess each other, but genuinely want to build together. Two people who can have individual goals while sharing a direction. Two people who can disagree without humiliation, communicate without manipulation, and love without losing themselves. That's not a relationship built on fear. That's partnership. So if you're wondering how to make a woman choose you, even when she has many options, don't spend your life studying every other man and trying to become more impressive than them. Become clear about who you are. Build a meaningful life. Develop emotional maturity. Be consistent. Treat her as a person rather than a prize. And then remember that your role is not to force the decision. Your role is to show up honestly and give both of you the freedom to discover whether the connection is real, because the ultimate goal isn't to become so impressive that nobody can resist you. The ultimate goal is to become so grounded that you no longer need to be chosen by everyone. You only need mutual choice with the right person. And when two people choose each other freely, consistently, and with open eyes, that's when attraction becomes something deeper. It becomes trust, it becomes partnership, it becomes respect. It becomes the beginning of something neither person has to force. So stop asking, how do I make her choose me? Start asking, am I becoming the person I respect? And is this someone I genuinely want beside me? When you can answer both questions honestly, you are no longer chasing love. You are building the capacity for it.